About the first session and the conclusions from there. And then there'll be some Q&A. Please identify yourselves and who you represent when you ask a question. And we'd also like to remind you that because of where we are and what we're discussing, please keep your questions to the actual topics we're discussing. The Minister for Culture and Sports is first, Miguel Iceta. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us to cover this ministerial meeting, which is part of our presidency of the EU. Today, as you know, we discussed two specific topics. First, culture as essential public good and a global public good. And that's what we were talking about in the first session. And in the first session, we saw that there's a great consensus around this and this objective more specifically. And this follows up from the UNESCO Mondial Mexico conference, which was held last year. The idea being to strengthen cultural policies of the EU and of the member states. The idea to work together, a commitment to ensure that culture become an SDG in its own right when the 2030 agenda is reviewed and updated. After this, we have another debate programmed where, again, I know we're starting from very similar places, and this is about sustainable development of cultural heritage. We didn't choose Cáceres to hold this meeting by accident. We wanted to choose a place that symbolizes the heritage, how you look after it, how you raise awareness around it, and how it can drive development if you look after your heritage well. At the end of our day, we plan to adopt a Cáceres declaration, which you may have heard about. You will be receiving the text. But again, we got unanimous support from member states to have this declaration, to subscribe to it. So after several weeks of work, at our permanent representation in member states and in Brussels, we've been able to finalize this declaration. I'd like to thank the Commissioner personally for being here. It's your first mission outside Brussels. You've had very few days to get used to your very important task, but this shows your commitment to us and the leadership the Commission wishes to take to move forward the cultural agenda under the EU's programs, but also in terms of discussion for the future. So, Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Minister, dear Miguel. It is indeed a pleasure to be in beautiful Cáceres. And as you said, it is my very first mission as a newly appointed Commissioner, but I think this is the right time and the right place to be. And I'm really grateful for this opportunity to exchange views with you and with all cultural ministers here today on these important priorities that the Spanish presidency set. I congratulate you for that, for your excellent hospitality and for the important subjects that you put on the agenda. I had a good opportunity to present my priorities with you, which are first to defend a strong budget for culture and creative sectors and industries in Europe, also to put very high on the agenda the situation in which are our cultural and creative sector artists, especially after the COVID pandemic. And last but not least, to put efforts to reduce the fragmentation within the cultural and creative sector. I think we had an excellent first exchange this morning, and I'm really, really looking forward to working with you and all colleagues to set culture really very high on the European agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Well, in that case, we'll open the floor to questions if you have any. That's assuming anybody has any questions.
One of the threats currently to culture is cancellation culture, this type of new censorship, at least in Spain. I don't know whether this is something which has been touched upon or if any comments were made. Are there other countries in which cases have been seen along the lines of what we've seen here in Spain?
específica.
There was no specific reference to this, but culture is against any type of censorship, and cancellation culture is one of those. And so all of the representatives of the governments and also the European Commission, we're all committed to stand up for freedom and therefore against any form of censorship.
Are there any other questions? And Joseph de Blue from EFE. Now, the culture budget needs to be a strong budget, as the Commissioner said. Are you implying that it's not always been the case? There's sometimes, if any cuts need to be made, the first cuts are in culture. So can we ensure that next time, if there are cuts, it won't be on the culture budget?
I hope it will be not, and I would rely very much on the member states and the fellow ministers to support me in that. In what concerns the European position and my position as Commissioner, it is very firm, and I reiterate it. I will strongly protect a strong budget for culture in Europe, and I'm looking forward to working together to achieve these common goals with our ministers.
Well, in that case, that concludes this press conference. Thank you very much again for attending.